Square roots, Lesson 1.8. The standard is 8EE2. The objective is to find square roots. The essential question, why is it helpful to write numbers in different ways? Escape from Radical Prison, adapted from a story by Miss Paxton. Two twin brothers were sent to Radical Prison for a crime they didn't commit. While in prison, they were broken down and worked very hard, but they stayed together. Finally, they decided to escape by digging under the prison wall. Only twins could attempt this escape together. The escape was too dangerous, and one of the twins died. The twin who escaped wasn't sure if he was happy because he escaped or sad because he lost his brother. Warning, when Radical Prison is empty, it magically disappears. It is never seen again. The square root of a number is one of its two equal factors. The steps are to divide or factor the inside term. Then, look inside for twins or square numbers. Finally, one twin dies and one escapes. The inverse of x squared is a square root. Example number 1. Simplify the square root. So what I'm going to do is break these numbers down. So 9 is really 3 times 3. And 16 is really 4 times 4. So now I have twins. One dies, one escapes. One dies, one escapes. So my answer is 3 over 4. Example number 2. Simplify the square root. So what I'm going to do is break this down. So 0.81 broken down is really 0.9 times 0.9. Now I have twins. One dies, one escapes. So my answer is positive or negative 0.9. Example number 3. Simplify the square root. So I have the negative of the square root of 49. I'm going to break that down to 7 times 7. Now I have twins. One dies, one escapes. So my answer is negative 7. Example number 4. Simplify the square root. You cannot take the square root of a negative number. This is not possible. So you cannot have a negative sign inside the square root. It can be on the outside, but not on the inside. Example number 5. Simplify the square root. So I know I can break down the square root of 50 to 25 times 2. I don't have any twins yet, so I'm going to break that down again. So 25 can be broken down to 5 times 5, and then I'm going to bring down the 2. Now I have twins. One dies, one escapes. Since the 2 does not have a twin, it's going to stay inside the square root. So my answer is going to be 5 root 2. Example number 6. Simplify the square root. I know that I can break down the square root of 72 to 9 times 8. I don't have any twins, so I'm going to break it down again. 9 can be broken down to 3 times 3, and 8 can be broken down to 4 times 2. I notice that 4 can be broken down further, so I'm going to go ahead and do it again. I'm going to bring down my 3's. 4 can be broken down to 2 times 2, and then I'm going to bring down the last 2. Now I'm going to go ahead and find my twins. One dies, one escapes, one dies, one escapes. The 2 that's remaining does not have a twin, so it's going to stay inside the square root. And then the ones that escape are going to be multiplied together. So 3 times 2 gives me 6. And then I have the 2 that stays inside the square root. So my answer is 6 root 2. Example number 7. Simplify the square root. So the square root of 18 can be broken down to 9 times 2. I don't have any twins, so I'm going to go ahead and do it again. So 9 can be broken down to 3 times 3, and then I'm going to bring down the 2. So now I have twins. One dies, one escapes. So the 2 that does not have a twin will stay inside the square root, so my answer will be 3 root 2. Example number 8. Simplify the square root. I know that the square root of 48 can be broken down to 6 times 8. I don't have any twins, so I'm going to do it again. So 6 can be broken down to 3 times 2. And then 8 can be broken down to 4 times 2. I know that 4 can be broken down further, so I'm going to do it again. So I'm going to bring down 3 times 2. And then 4 can be broken down to 2 times 2. And then I'm going to bring down the 2. So now I have my twins. Nothing happens to the 3 because it doesn't have a twin. So my 2's, I have one that dies, one escapes. One dies, one escapes. So the ones that escape are going to be multiplied together. So 2 times 2 will give me 4. And nothing happens to the 3, so it stays inside. So my answer is 4 root 3. Example number 9. Solve the equation. A squared equals 289. So the inverse of anything squared is to take the square root. So I'm going to take the square root of both sides. So when I break down a squared, that gives me a times a. When I break down 289, that gives me 17 times 17. Now I have my twins. So one dies, one escapes. One dies, one escapes. So my answer is A equals positive or negative 17. Now anytime you solve an equation, your answers always need positive or negative. So we'll write that down. Answers to x squared equations need positive or negative because they're not sure if they're happy or if they're sad. Example number 10. Solve the equation. M squared equals 0.09. Since I have m squared, I'm going to take the inverse, and that would be to take the square root of both sides. So m squared can be broken down to m times m. And 0.09 can be broken down to 0.3 times 0.3. Now I have twins, so one dies, one escapes. One dies, one escapes. So my answer is m equals plus or minus 0.3. Example number 11. Solve the equation. Y squared equals 4 over 25. So I'm going to take the inverse, and that would be to take the square root of both sides. So y can be broken down to y times y. And 4 over 25, I'm going to leave that in fraction form. 4 can be broken down to 2 times 2. And 25 can be broken down to 5 times 5. So now I have my twins. So one dies, one escapes. One dies, one escapes. One dies, one escapes. So my answer is y equals plus or minus 2 over 5.